For Inside Carolina, I'm Taylor Vippolis, and this is Shot and Vip, where I'm joined by former Carolina linebacker and Carolina analyst Jeff Schoettmer. Shot, I could hear the boys are back in town playing somewhere off in the distance. It's great to see your face. How have you been, and how excited are you to be back here right now?
First of all, I've been great. I mean, we're approaching the best time of the year, and second of all, I can't believe you persuaded me to get back on this show and do this for another year. But as football season rolls around, you just get more and more excited, and especially once you're out of the game, you got to get your football fix in. And you know what, my juices are flowing. I'm ready to strap my pads on for a practice or two, maybe a game, couple plays, but it's the best time of the year. There's nothing on TV right now. The Olympics are over. We're just watching August baseball. Actually we got some preseason NFL games on. We got Hard Knocks, but we're just gearing up for college football Saturdays.
Full transparency for the listeners, because I know there's a lot of listeners who when I see them in Chapel Hill, they're like, hey, is Shot and Vip coming back? People wanted to hear it. We were pretty beaten at the end of last year. We were pretty defeated. I think we have, as lettermen and as people connected to the program, I think we have a lot of the same feelings that a lot of the fans had towards the end of last year when Carolina is getting destroyed by NC State and they're losing in the bowl game, and that apathy starts to kick in for this fan base. But as you get closer, like you mentioned, to August, and you have a new team and you have new expectations, or for this Carolina team, a lack of expectations, there is a certain excitement as you're getting closer to the season with that unknown. And before we kind of talk about this Carolina team this upcoming season, when you're looking at Mack Brown, the Mack Brown 2.0 era in Chapel Hill, what have you seen from this North Carolina team of things that they have done well?
I think the first thing you got to start with is, we've recruited elite quarterbacks. You go to Drake and Sam, and I think any of the elite football programs across the country over the last 5 years would be happy with those two guys as their starting quarterbacks, or not even happy, but thrilled to have those two. So, for Coach Brown and the staff to, obviously land two homegrown talents in Drake and Sam and get them on campus and have them start for the last 4 years, that's been a huge thing that is, an added boost to our program, because the quarterback, whether it's high school, college, or pros, it's the most, polarizing position. And to have, two studs, two NFL starters, representing our country, or not representing our country, representing our university the way they have the last couple of years has been great. I guess the second thing he's done is, rejuvenate the fan base at times. Okay. So, 2015 and 16 were great years of Coach Fedora's, kind of towards the end of his run. There's a lot of interest in Carolina football. 17 and 18 were another story. And then obviously that leads to Matt getting hired in 19. And for him to kind of right the ship, get some recruits in his first year and, get Carolina football back on the map, so to say, that was great. Obviously it's been up and down since then, but we've been in conversation every year, not national championship conversation, but we've been in conversation of, last year we're top 10, after we beat Miami. Obviously the wheels fell off and things don't go well, but, I do want to give him a little bit of credit for, our program was at a stalemate. We were 2-9 or 2-10 that last year with Coach Fedora, and we, revitalized the program a little bit with boosters and facilities and things of that nature and recruiting. So, obviously it hasn't been a major success, but, he's rejuvenated the team and the fan base. He's recruited talent. Obviously that hasn't translated as well as we like, but, that keeps us interested in the offseason. When signing day comes around and you get a 5-star to commit in, February, then, that's exciting for the fan base. So, I mean, I wish the list was longer of things. There's no ACC championship to speak for. There's no Orange Bowl to talk about. We win a bowl game his first year, but, I guess those are kind of the key things that he's done, since he's been back.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of some of the points you made when you're talking about that he has recruited well, I think one area in particular where you can highlight how well Mac Brown 2.0 has gone has been recruiting in North Carolina. Those last couple of years with Coach Fedora, it felt like Carolina was going more into the Georgias and the Floridas to try to have to win and kind of ignoring that there is a lot of homegrown talent here, but Clemson was coming in taking the best players, or South Carolina was coming in taking some of the best players. I do think that that's been the case at times, but it's been at a way less scale where Mac Brown has kind of put a fence back around North Carolina. Now it's not this Fort Knox type fence. Teams are still able to get over it at times, but you see like Jordan Shipp, a wide receiver this year in the class from Providence Day, was one of the top players in North Carolina, one of the best receivers at the position. You have guys like Des Evans, Javari Ritzies, the Travis Shaws, guys like the last couple of years of Fedora. Those guys weren't even making, North Carolina wasn't making those guys, top 5 list or top 10.
They weren't even taking official visits.
Yeah. And Mac Brown has done a good job of keeping some of those guys in state and kind of selling his vision of this program to them, being like, hey, you don't have to go to the Clemsons or the Georgias to compete for national championships. You can do it here. Now, it hasn't translated to success, and we could talk about some of that in a bit, but I think that's one area that Mac has gotten really has been able to hammer home to recruits. And then I do think he has raised expectations where Carolina goes into the season and they're expecting to compete for at least being in the ACC championship. I don't think fans are beating their chest and being like, hey, we should be in the playoffs, because I don't think that was necessarily all that realistic at times. But there has been a raised expectations where Carolina, 8 wins isn't seen as enough, especially when you have Drake May at quarterback, when you have Sam Howell at quarterback. The Carolina fans now are coming to expect like, hey, we should be winning double-digit games. And when North Carolina doesn't reach that, the fan base has a right to be upset about it, because Mac Brown has come in and kind of said, hey, this is where I want to take the program to. Carolina really hasn't gotten to where the program has, where Mac Brown said he wanted to get the program to, outside of that Orange Bowl appearance against Texas A&M. And with the quarterbacks, Drake May, Sam Howell, you have quarterbacks that give you a chance to win every game. And I think there has been a level of confidence there from Carolina the past couple of years where it's like, okay, mate, our D-line hasn't been producing that well, or we don't have a defense that can go toe-to-toe with a Clemson or with the Florida State. But what we do have is Sam Howell. We have Drake May, who can make every throw possible. They've had great skill position guys, the De'Ami Browns, the Daz Newsomes, all the tight ends that Carolina currently has. They've had guys in the mix to have an offense that can go toe-to-toe with just about anybody in the country. So that's kind of all the positives that Carolina has had since Mac Brown has come back. But where would you say you would like to see things be better this year for this Carolina team?
Yeah, and this is no particular order. Okay, so number one, I want better game management. Okay, I want better game management from the coaches. It starts at the top. Coach Brown, his assistants, all the assistants underneath the coordinators. I mean, look, we have a giant staff now, so we're able to, do more on game days. And I want to harp on game management in terms of, I don't want timeout issues. I don't want play clock issues. Part of that's the quarterback, but, now we have better communication with the headset rule going into effect this year. I don't want substitution issues in terms of, we have to waste a timeout because there's 10 guys on the field, or we play a defensive snap or two with 10 guys on the field. Like, I'll never forget Coach Brown's first game back for South Carolina. There's two plays in a row where we got 10 guys on defense. I mean, that's just unacceptable. Okay. Game management, I'm talking 2-point plays, fourth down calls, special teams, critical situations, 2-minute, 4-minute drives, all the situational football. I throw that in game management. Fake punts, fake field goals, defending fake field goals, defending fake punts, all that's in game management. I want us to play a clean game every time. Throw penalties in there. Penalties is part of game management. The next thing I want us to see better is just us to play team football. I want us to win ugly, play a complete game where the offense, defense, and special teams, balance each other out and they feed off each other. I want to win a game 14-10 if that's what it takes to get the job done. Like in the past, I think, I'm not throwing any coordinators under the bus, but maybe some were more concerned about their stats versus, holding the ball longer so our defense doesn't stay on the field or things of that nature. I want us to play complementary football, take some notes from Bill Belichick's, game plan and win ugly. There's games that you don't have to win, 37-34, or we don't have to score 45. Like I want us to play complementary football. And, that's the best way to win. And I think that's going to be the recipe for our team this year to be successful. The last thing I want to see is I want to see a tougher team. And by toughness, I mean, there's really a couple things. I think we need to be a run first team on offense. We have a monstrous offensive line. They're not proven, not all of them, but they're massive. You can't hide 6'7" on both bookends of your tackles. The center from Georgia is a big kid. Obviously, Willie Lampkin's not, but he plays big. He plays with the nastiness. I want us to control the line of scrimmage on offense and defense. It's easier said than done, but those are the great football teams. And then we as people and coaches overcomplicate football. It boils down to two things: blocking and tackling. As an offensive player, can you break tackles and avoid tackles and hold on to the football? And as a defensive player, can you shed blocks and make tackles? All this scheme stuff is great, but, football is very fundamental. If you just do those two things well, you're going to win the majority of your games. So I kind of lump in all those things: controlling the offense and defensive line, blocking, tackling, and, being a run first team. That's toughness. And then throw in mentally tough, where we win critical situations, and not just the players, but the coaches. They got to be mentally tough when, there's a 2-minute drill. We need our best calls. We need to, handle the pressure well. So, I've seen flashes of those things over the last 4 years. But if you want to have a successful team this year without an elite quarterback or without an elite offense or defense, you have to do those three things: game management, play team football, and be a tough team.
Yeah, with the clocking and game management, that almost feels like asking for the bare minimum. Like, please do not lose a game because of a like boneheaded clock mismanagement. Like you mentioned the South Carolina game, and one of the moments I kind of think of when I think of that South Carolina game is when
at the end of the game.
when they
gave them the ball back,
took a knee on fourth down.
Yeah,
they took a knee on fourth down, and I'm just sitting there like the fact that that's one of the first things I think of when I think of that game is not a good sign, and something that luckily for Carolina didn't wind up coming back to hurt them, because if you do wind up losing a situation like that, it's the same thing as the Miami Georgia Tech game from this past season, where you're like, how did a coaching staff that's getting paid as much as these coaching staffs are getting paid find a way to lose this game? So that's why I do think a situation like that is asking for the bare minimum. One area I would like to see better this year is special teams. I think special teams kind of fits in that same mold of like, your special teams can't be the reason why you lose a game. Like there was multiple times last year where Carolina's getting their punt operation blocked, and it felt like one team was able to identify where Carolina was weak in their punt operation, and then the next week that same the next team saw that same weakness, and then the next week that next team saw that same weakness, where it's like something you're putting on tape is being seen by everybody. And it almost felt like they were going into every game forgetting what previously had happened. And
Yeah.
I do think a lot of that comes back to the coaching. And then finally, the last thing I would say I kind of want to see from this Carolina team, from a Carolina fan perspective or a Letterman perspective of somebody who cares about the program, it's like, stop playing down to the level of competition, because I do think far too often, like you look at the numbers since Mac Brown has come back, and it's North Carolina's tied for second in the ACC for wins over that stretch. But there is such a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth, because some of the losses, you're just leaving a lot of wins on the table when you're losing to a Georgia Tech team, when you're losing to a Virginia team. And I do understand the concept of like any given Saturday, and like those guys are also on scholarship. But like the past couple of years, North Carolina has had the crutch. Like, you have Drake May, you have Omar and Hampton. You're at home against Virginia as a 23.5-point favorite.
Yep.
There's just no excuse to lose those games. And I think when you're looking at the Mac Brown 2.0 era in its totality, there's just been far too many of those moments where we're sitting here on Sunday like, how did Carolina lose this game? They had everything going in their favor. They're up, sometimes double digits in the fourth quarter with those quarterbacks, and you're still talking about a team losing on Sunday, which I think doesn't sit well with a lot of people. But back to this current team, when we're talking about this team in 2024, what would you say on paper the best position group is?
I think there's 2 or 3 position groups I could go with. Like if we're going top end talent, it's running back, led by Hampton. But I kind of think best position group as, high end talent and then depth. And I'm going to go tight end. I think I mentioned tight end as the best position group last year, but here's why. So Copenhaver is kind of a mix guy. He can run routes, but he can also stick his nose in and block. He's an athletic kid. He's finally healthy. And then you got Nesbitt, who is a mismatch in space. He's more the Travis Kelce tight end, where he's not really going to, align attached to the line of scrimmage, get in a 3-point stance and knock back your 6 technique. He's going to be a mismatch against linebackers and safeties in the throw game. And then you throw in the Johnson kid, transfer from A&M, and he's got size on him. He's 6'6". He had 4 touchdowns in the SEC last year, and he's only I think this will be his 3rd year of college football. To be honest, there's not many teams in the country that have a better tight end room than us. Just because some schools can have one elite tight end, but the drop off after that, when that tight end goes out of the game, it's severe. I mean, it's like going from a 1st-round draft pick to a scout team guy. And we have 3 guys that I think, could start any given, I think they all have potential to play in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, I guess we'll talk a little bit about it later, but I don't think we shouldn't play a snap of football without 1 and maybe 2 of those guys on the field at all times. Like we've talked about personnel groupings in the past, 11 personnel. We should always have 1 tight end in the game. I think 50% of the snaps we play on offense, we should have 2 tight ends in the game. Let your best players tailor your offense to those guys. And, we'll keep them fresh. We'll be able to rotate them. They have different skill sets, but we need to utilize all 3 of them. So high-end talent, Nesbitt's going to be a, top 3-4 round draft pick. Copenhaver could go late, but, they all have high-end talent and there's depth behind them. So I think the tight end room is the best.
Yeah, you have not 1, not 2, but 3 ACC starting caliber tight ends in one offense. And I do think the thing that I like about that tight end room is that what their skills are and what their strengths are, there's not a ton of overlap. So there are ways to find to get them all on the field together and try to get creative with some of their packages. I do think running back is the strength or the best position group because of how good Hampton is, and a lot of talk out of training camp has been what Barlow can kind of be for Hampton to supplement him. And we've seen at times the 2015, 2016, when you have a back as good as Elijah Hood, when you add another running back, whether it's like a Romar Morris or a TJ Logan, and you can kind of have that change of pace guy, and have somebody when a defense is getting gas going up and down the field, to be able to put a Barlow in and be that change of pace, to where you're not expecting Omar, or you're not relying on Omar and Hampton to get 30 plus carries a game. Which I don't think is a terrible strategy with this North Carolina team.
I don't either. Have you seen how that guy looks right now? I mean, he looks like a Greek god.
Yeah,
God took his time on that kid.
Yeah, a lot of the talk out of training camp has kind of been Barlow can be this back to supplement Hampton, so there isn't this great expectation on him. But every time he's kind of talked to the media, it seems like he wants that expectation. I think he's kind of got that 2K yardage mark in his sight. But if I wasn't going to pick the running backs and tight end was off the board, I think I would go with the cornerback position for this North Carolina team. This is as confident as I could remember a staff feeling in their starting two cornerbacks, probably since the MJ Stewart, MJ Stewart, Dez where we had a ton of confidence that, hey, Dez is going to lock somebody up, MJ Stewart's going to lock somebody up. We have a pretty good feel about what the rest of the defense is, but if you could take two receivers off the field for a majority of plays, you're going to win more often than not. Yep. And I think North Carolina has a similar situation in this training camp right now with Elijah Huzzy and Marcus Allen. And Marcus Allen's put on a lot of size from all reports. But I do think there's a lot of confidence there. And I do think North Carolina, they're talking about having 4 safeties in a rotation. They like what they have at the star position or the nickel position. So I think the secondary is this, since Mac Brown's been back, the secondary really hasn't been a strength at any point. But I think when you're looking at this team on paper, at least, the secondary is shaping into being a strength, and we kind of goes out the window when the Minnesota game starts, and the on paper phrase doesn't really matter anymore. But at least for now, I do think there is a lot of confidence in this UNC secondary, particularly at the cornerback position. But Sean, I wanted to play a game with you. This is a game I've been pitching for the Le Batard show. It's called If Not Now, When? And I'm going to put in some music in post-production to kind of dress this segment up. But the premise of If Not Now, When? You're a smart guy. You're a Carolina-educated guy. I think you can figure it out.
Business school, by the way. I know I don't look it, but Keenan Flagler.
You just name a player, and then you just say, if not now, when? And you kind of just talk like, hey, if they don't figure it out now, they're probably not going to figure it out. And some of the NFL guys I had for this example were like Kyle Pitts, Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, guys where it feels like, hey, it's their time to produce. And when you look at this defensive line for North Carolina, take your pick. If not now, when?
I mean, I was kind of looking at the roster, and there's a couple things I want to talk about real quick. This is mind-blowing to me, okay? 7 of our 8 guys, 7 of our 8 2 deep are third-year players or more experienced, right? Start with Des Evans. He was a 5-star out of high school, offered by everybody, and he's a 5th-year player in our program. Kevin Hester, he's a 5th-year player in our program that's probably played 1,500 to 2,000 snaps in his career. Kamen Rucker, all-conference guy, 5th-year player. Started at 4I against Texas A&M in the Orange Bowl, okay? And now he's playing edge. Like, that's experience. That was 2020. That was COVID. We were wearing masks. We were doing a podcast with masks on back then. Ritzy, 5-star, 4th-year player in the program. Travis Shaw, 5-star, 3rd-year player in the program. Josh Harris, 6th-year player. He's played at NC State, Ole Miss in the SEC, and back to Carolina. He was a 4-star out of high school. He's got a wife, 2 kids, and a baby on the way.
Got a mortgage. Got a whole mortgage.
I don't mean to bring race into this, He's Polynesian. You want Polynesian defensive linemen on your team. I don't care whatever, like middle school, peewee, college, pro, high school. If you have a Polynesian defensive lineman, like, you're doing good.
They can play.
They can play. Okay, and then Bo Atkinson. He's a third-year player in our program. He looks the part now. He's growing his hair out like a smart guy, and he had 3.5 sacks last year. I think any Power 5, or I guess now Power 4 school in the country would take those 7 guys on paper. Okay, they're 3 years into the program. They've been in the weight program. They're highly rated kids. I mean, if not now, when? Like the last 2 years, I think I said the D-line was the strength of the program. You know, we got the new D-line coach in there who was with them last year. He's got a great pedigree, been in the NFL for a long time, and you know, if he can't get them to produce, and Jeff Collins can't get them to produce, there should be a case study on what the hell went wrong the last 4 or 5 years at Carolina with those guys.
Yeah.
It should be a Netflix 30 for 30, like the best that never was with Marcus Dupree. Something like that should be studied, because it is put up or shut up. We've been saying this the last couple of years, and like, yeah. I hope that answers your question there.
Yeah, and when you talk about, like, when I was talking about the in-state recruiting before, it would be almost going to, like, I don't know if you're a Marvel movie guy, but seeing like a different universe or a different timeline where it's like, what happens if a Des Evans chooses a Georgia or a Clemson, or what if a Travis Shaw chooses a Georgia or a Ritzy? Because it's hard to imagine that North Carolina, if all these players' careers come and go, and it's kind of been the production where we're talking about now, where Des Evans has like 3 career sacks at Carolina in 4 years, or you know, some of the production that Carolina has gotten, where it's like, there's just no way Carolina could have missed on every recruit, because there's going to be misses in every class, but every defensive line commit that you got was a miss. That's a hard reality to kind of accept, I think, if you're a Carolina fan, especially because like when Don Callahan's covering the recruiting events, like, and a Des Evans or Jahvaree Ritzy commits, like, that's an awesome experience for the UNC fans, and something to be proud of. Like, hey, this 5-star player is choosing to stay home and choosing to build something at Carolina. And when the production doesn't match, I was going to say doesn't quite match being a 5-star, it's like, this is not like the production doesn't quite match. This is the production of, like, if you showed somebody some of the stats from players on the Carolina defensive line outside of K'Mon Rucker and Bo Atkinson, you would have no idea that Carolina has recruited as well as they have along the defensive line. So I think the defensive line definitely deserved their own topic with how their performance has been. And I think a lot of the hope for Carolina is around Ted Monachino being the new defensive line coach and stepping up from the analyst role with Tim Cross moving on from the program. And I think a lot of the hope is tied that, if not now, when? Like, you have to start getting production on some of these guys before they move on from their time in Chapel Hill. So I think we all have questions with the defensive line, but if you had to pick another position group for where your most questions or your most uncertainty is coming from leading into the Minnesota game, where would you go?
I mean, quarterback's the obvious answer. I'll let you kind of take that. I think it's linebacker. You know, we're installing a new defense. You know, Power Echols is a proven great ACC player. Is he going to be an all-pro? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. He's a really, really, really good college football player, tough leader, tackles well, plays well in space. But there's 2 of them out there. And the other one is, you know, Amari Campbell has, you know, quote unquote, taken the job, but he started one game, and, you know, the game that he started, we let up 30 something points. He wasn't a world beater in that game. And now he's got a broken hand apparently. And then behind him, it's, you know, redshirt freshman or true freshman. And, you know, Jeff Collins, his nickname is what, the Minister of Mayhem or something?
Yeah, I think so.
So here's the thing about defenses, right? If you're creating these exotic blitzes and pressures from, the boundary corner, the star, the free safety, the bandit, the Mike, the Will, they're running twist games. Who's got to coordinate that? It's the linebackers. And, obviously Power is experienced and he can help communicate, and he will, and he'll take over a lot of the other communication from the other linebacker spot. But that linebacker, the Will, has to be able to communicate to his side of the field as well. So it's not just the physical nature of, playing linebacker. It's what I'm more worried about is a first year starter being able to, relay calls to his side, to get the D line straight, to get the boundary corner straight, you're communicating with all levels of the defense. So, and then depth has been an issue at linebacker. The last 4 seasons, we've essentially played 2 linebackers the whole year in every game. It's Gimmel, it's Chaz, and then it's Power and Cedric. And I've gone on the podcast in the years prior and backed up that linebackers, I personally think, should play, the whole game. I made the reference to Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis back in the day. Like, if either one of those guys came off the field, you're like, Coach, what are you doing? Those guys are studs. Put them in. Obviously you play more snaps in college football, but that, I think that's kind of the position that I'm a little hesitant on. I love Tommy Thigpen. I worked with him for 4 years. He's recruited obviously very well. I mean, look at the guys he's recruited: Power, Cedric. He got Chaz to flip over to linebacker and turn him into an NFL player. Gimmel, who was unheralded recruit, and he got into an NFL camp. Like, so I got confidence that he can develop a guy, but right now, that's unproven.
You mentioned Amari Campbell playing with a cast on his hand, and the hope for Carolina is that he's going to return to practice within the next coming days, and then hopefully be available for that Minnesota game. What was the difficulty like playing with a cast on your hand? Because this is something that I'm not sure people remember, but you have some experience with.
So yeah, I think redshirt freshman or redshirt sophomore year, I broke my hand on either the second or third day of camp. I broke the third metatarsal. I still have a depressed knuckle right here, never healed properly. I will say times have changed because I got an x-ray that night and I practiced the next morning. So
Built different.
Campbell, get your butt back on the field. It's tough. It's really like a 4 to 6 week injury. And I assume he broke the third or fourth metatarsal or whatever. So he's going to, you have to play with a hard cast for 2 weeks. And then, after that you get it off, but you just have restricted movement in your hand. So I think one of the most underrated skills to have as a linebacker is your ability to use your hands. The greatest linebackers in college football and the pro football game, they are experts with their hands. They're like martial artists. Okay. And, to have a broken hand, that's going to be tough on them. It's another thing that a first year starting linebacker has to think about. My hands hurting and I don't have, full strength and full range of motion in it. Meanwhile, I got to relay the defense to the rest of the team. So, and, read his keys. So I think it's just one more, distraction for him. That's kind of why I threw linebacker into my unproven, kind of question mark of the team. But, I got faith. He'll be good. He'll be good by Minnesota. He'll get a little nice shot in the butt before the game, or take a pill, whatever they do now. And he won't feel it, and he'll be ready to go.
Quick break so I can remind everybody about our friends over at Johnny T-Shirt. If you're going to be in Chapel Hill, you could visit them on Franklin Street. If not, no worries. You could visit them online at johnnytshirt.com. Football season is right around the corner, and Johnny T-Shirt has all the Carolina apparel that the Carolina football fan could possibly want. The hats, the T-shirts, the jerseys, you name it. They've got it. It's great people and great customer service. And don't forget, Inside Carolina premium subscribers save 10% off their orders. Looking ahead to this season, we're going to pick breakout stars. So I think for the most part, outside of like a Power Echols or a JJ Jones, a Martin Hampton, anybody is kind of on the table because of how unproven this North Carolina team kind of is.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Chris Culliver. He's a North Carolina kid.
Yes, I believe so.
North Carolina kid. I mean, I remember when he was getting recruited, and I watched some of his highlights. You know, he looks the part. And some of the reports I've heard is, you know, he's got probably the highest potential of any of our receivers. He's got the highest ceiling. You know, and receiver is a very unproven position. I could have gone receiver. You know, besides J.J. Jones, there's really no one proven. Kobe Paysauer, he's a good player, but he's coming off 2 broken feet.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say Chris Culver is our breakout star at receiver. You know, he's got length, he's got leaping ability, he's got speed, he's got the frame. So I hope he breaks out and, you know, looks like Diami or Tez or one of those guys we've had in the past.
Yeah, that receiver room almost looks like receiver by committee at the moment, outside of a Kobe Paysauer, outside of J.J. Jones. It's a lot of unproven guys. Gavin Blackwell, Jordan Shipp has been a name that people kind of talked about before camp started. And I do think Chris Culver has the measurables that you're looking for at the receiver, kind of that strider guy who can take tops off the defense. And then he also provides a lot in the kick return game and being an option there. My breakout star, I'm looking at a lot of names here. I think I'm going to go along the offensive line, which it's like, how are you grading out to be a star? But Aiden Banfield, starting left guard. I think this North Carolina team, I was going to pick offensive line for my biggest position group question, just because of the lack of starts that you have there. And when you're looking at some of the names at that left guard position, it's the Malik McGowns, the Jonathan Adornos. It's people that have kind of been in the program already and have had a shot to take that left guard spot and kind of run away with it. But one of the names that the coaches have kind of kept mentioning throughout camp has been Aiden Banfield, true freshman, 3-star type guy, where maybe Carolina found a diamond in the rough, and maybe they were due to find a diamond in the rough along the offensive line position for how poorly, or not poorly, they've recruited the offensive line, but I don't think they've recruited that well in the offensive line since Mac Brown 2.0 has come back, but more so, I guess, developed players along the offensive line, where it feels like, hey, we have to go out in the transfer portal and address the center position or address our tackle positions. And you have somebody like a Diego Pounds who leaves Ole Miss and kind of leaves that position group feeling a bit more uncertain going into the season. So I think if Aiden Banfield can come in and take the starting left guard position from day one and be that starter throughout the season, one of the things that this Carolina offensive line does have, because it doesn't have a lot of starts, but one of the things they do have is great size. And if Carolina's offensive line, I don't think they have to be like this perfect offensive line. Omar and Hampton's a good enough back where this offensive line just has to be average to like slightly above average, and Hampton's a back who can kind of do the rest and make a lot of people look good. But I also
did Aiden come in the spring, or did he enroll in the summer?
That's a good question.
Because if he enrolled in the summer,
early enrollee, he was an early enrollee.
Okay, that makes more sense. I mean, if you enroll in the summer and you're a true freshman offensive lineman, you're working with the first team, you know, by week 2 of training camp, then kudos to you. I don't care what school you're at, because that's a badass right there. You know, I don't care if you're at, you know, James Madison. If you're a true freshman that's, you know, starting in the offensive line, then that's impressive.
One of the toughest positions, I think, to start from day one for even if you are an early enrollee, but early enrollee, 3-star prospect, ranked as the 28th best offensive lineman in the country and the 69th player in Georgia by ESPN. Buford, Georgia. Give me Buford guys. And
I like Buford guys. Buford guys got, I mean, some of their facilities are better than some of the colleges, and they know how to play football.
From Mill Creek High School. Let's get into quarterback conversations, because I think a lot of Carolina's success is going to be ultimately dependent on the quarterback position. It seems like all reports out of camp, it's Max Johnson starting to separate, getting more and more reps with the ones. What have you kind of seen from that quarterback position room?
I think their only answer is Max Johnson. That's just how I think. Kind of going back to what I said at the beginning of the podcast of winning ugly, controlling the line of scrimmage, playing, complementary football. I think Max Johnson, his experience, he gives us the best chance to win. Here's why. Because, what you can do behind a big offensive line and an All-American running back is you can literally just catch the snap and hand it to him. And it most likely will be a productive play. Hand it to him. I mean, hand it to Hampton. And then, I think he's a guy that can get it to the tight ends. I mentioned the tight ends being the strength of our team. So I think he gives us the best chance to win. His SEC experience, his pedigree in terms of his dad, his bloodlines, big Brad. What's his Twitter name? Have you seen his dad, Brad Johnson? I think it's Big Bad Brad. That's his Twitter handle, but he does trick shots on Twitter, and he's unbelievable. So he's got the bloodlines. I just didn't see enough out of Connor Harrell in the West Virginia game, and obviously that was 9 months ago, his first start. He's an electric athlete. I don't think right now he's developed enough as a passer to truly run the offense. And this is me after not watching any of fall camp or any of his summer workouts. So I'm just saying this kind of blindly, but I personally think Max Johnson, just with his like I said, his tenure playing a bunch of games in the SEC and playing some decent football at times, I think he gives us the best chance to win.
Yeah, one of the things I mentioned in one of the quarterback videos I did from this offseason is we're going to get into the schedule talk in a second, but when you look at some of the teams that Max Johnson played when he was named the starting quarterback at LSU or eventually became the starting quarterback due to injury at Texas A&M, his losses are like I have this schedule pulled up right now. Number 25, Arkansas. Number 2, at Alabama. At number 12, Ole Miss. He beat a 20th ranked Florida team at home. He lost at number 16, Kentucky. And then he lost at number 22, Auburn. Carolina isn't playing any of those teams. The teams that Carolina's playing in the beginning of the season, it's Minnesota, it's Charlotte, it's NC Central, kind of getting the chance to get a feel for this season. And then you have your tougher games later in the schedule, but still nobody on Carolina's schedule is at an Alabama or really even like that Ole Miss type level. I guess Florida State would be the best comparison, but even then, like going into Bryant-Denny Stadium, that's a challenge for a quarterback.
Yeah.
Which leads me to believe that similar to Drake May and Sam Howell to a lesser extent, Max Johnson at the very least is going to make your team competitive in a lot of these games, because I don't think Carolina is going to go out there and ask him to, throw for 350 yards in some of the situations where they kind of put Drake May in. I do think there's a sense of Carolina knowing what they have at the quarterback position and in the quarterback room to put those guys in the best positions to win games. And I would say if you are a Carolina fan who is worried about the quarterback position going into the season, I think you could lean a lot of hope on the staff understanding what they do have in the quarterback room.
Yeah, no, I mean, my ideal game this year is a 27-17 win or a 24-14 win where Max Johnson throws the ball 20 times. He's 16 of 20 for 220 yards, maybe a touchdown. Between Hampton and Barlow, they have 35 carries. Our tight ends touch the ball double-digit times. I think that's the recipe for success. And, he's a big kid. He's a lefty. He can see over that offensive line. He can get the ball out quick. I don't think the strength of his game is down the field like we saw Drake and Sam just being able to throw outside the numbers 40 yards on a dime, or those deep end breaking routes that the skinny posts and the daggers and the digs and things like that. But, I think we're going to see a little bit different offense than we have in the past. And, I think Max Johnson will be, obviously he enrolled in the spring, so he's got a bunch of reps under his belt. But this is why we're the analysts sitting behind a computer screen talking. We can only make our best judgments, but that's what I truly think. He gives us the best chance.
Before we wrap up, a big shout out to our friends at Congruity. Congruity is a North Carolina-based national coverage, local presence company with personal support straight from the Tar Heel State. Congruity is empowering small and mid-sized business owners with HR and payroll outsourcing, enabling you to grow your business while they take care of your greatest assets, your people. And they are doing it with top-of-the-line technology and services for every stage of your business's growth with a state-of-the-art online platform. Congruity, they are obsessed with customer service where they become part of your team. They do the heavy lifting, providing essential admin support with a single point of contact and support available on demand with services that are tailor-made for you, transforming your organization. Congruity has helped hundreds of businesses improve and enhance their day-to-day lives, level up your HR capabilities, save money, unlock game-changing growth. Visit congruityhr.com/Tar Heels to learn all about Congruity. Fill out a quick form to be connected to their consultants, and they'll give Inside Carolina listeners or viewers a payroll and HR assessment for free. That's congruityhr.com/Tar Heels, congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. All right, back to the episode. Last question before we get out of here. Looking at Carolina's schedule this season, I do understand the narrative that there are a lot of uncertainties for this North Carolina team, or a lot of positions where they might not grade out at even like average in the ACC. And that can kind of lead to some skepticism in the season and that kind of wait and see approach. But I do think one of the things that is working in Carolina's favor is when you look at the schedule, it is not overwhelming in the slightest bit. So what's kind of your take on Carolina's strength of schedule when you're looking at this going into the regular season?
I mean, this could be me putting on my, fan cap here, but looking at the schedule today, I'm going game by game and I'm like 8-4 minimum, should be 9-3, could be 10-2. Like I don't see the first 6 games of the year, I think we should win. I mean, obviously on paper, we're more talented but obviously you don't win games on paper. I think our 2 toughest games are, Florida State and NC State. Outside of that, each game is winnable, or as we've shown in the past, each game is losable. So I guess I kind of got sidetracked from your question there, but the 2 toughest games, I think any common UNC fan or football fan can look at the schedule and be like, yeah, it's the rivalry game versus NC State, who we've gotten our ass beat the last couple of years, or it's the Florida State team has a hell of a coach. They've recruited really well. They, ACC champs last year. But outside of those 2, like I would love to beat NC State, and with the week of the NC State game, I truly think we're going to beat them. But outside of those 2 games, each game is winnable. Our strength of schedule is, middle of the pack. So I think 60, in between 60 or 70 in the country, and to be a ACC school playing that low this strength of schedule, it's in our favor. And I'll kind of relate it to, I got to throw some shout outs to the 2015 team, because I guess a little bit of knock on us is we didn't quote unquote play a hard schedule. Obviously, we lose a heartbreaker to South Carolina. We won't talk about that. But we didn't play. I think we played 1 or 2 ranked teams until Clemson in the ACC championship. But all those games that we were playing teams that were either barely above 500 or barely below 500, we took care of them.
Yeah.
And that should count for a lot. Like whoever's on your schedule, anyone can beat anyone. I'm not saying NC Central is going to go in and beat Georgia, but like for the most part, there's some parity in college football. And we have very winnable games on our schedule. This schedule, favors us very well.
Yeah. When I was talking to Phil Steele this summer on one of the podcasts, he actually said he thinks Carolina is going to be the favorite, or should be the favorite, in every game leading up to the Florida State game, which would have Carolina sitting at, I think,
8-0,
8-0, 7-0. Yeah, 8-0. But we've seen the problem for this North Carolina team since Mac Brown has come back is that you really can't, outside of like the Central game, I guess, and JMU with a lot of turnover. But even then, they've kind of been one of these feisty group of 5 teams the past couple of years, and a new coach is probably going to be trying to carry some of that momentum. The problem with Carolina is that you really haven't been able to pencil games in as wins, because the games that you kind of go in with that mindset, all of a sudden you're in a game in the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden Carolina's down with a minute 10 left, and you're asking your quarterback to go out there and save you because of how much of a disappointment the entire game has been up to that point. And then if you're asking your superhero quarterback to make a few plays, and then he only has one drive to do that and he doesn't make it, the other team gets the ball back and knees it 3 times, and you're going back to that locker room pretty disappointed. So I do think that's the biggest thing when I look at this Carolina schedule. Every game is winnable, every game is losable, and that's the kind of mindset that this Carolina team has to kind of take going into the season. I think that's one of the things Mac Brown kind of talked about expectations for this year, is that this team kind of has the chip on their shoulder, and he's not even telling the team like, last year I think he was saying like 9 wins isn't enough, because he's going into this one being like, hey, let's just take every game at a time. Let's try to go 1-0 every week and kind of see where we do end up. And I'm glad you did mention that point from 2015, because outside of that first disappointment game against South Carolina, which the team probably needed to kind of jumpstart and kind of lock in again and reshift the focus, so we didn't have a disappointment of a season. Whatever it felt like from that moment on, whatever team you put in front of us, everybody on that field had the mindset like, hey, let's just kick the living crap out of this team right now, and kind of take all the doubt out, where you're not sitting in the locker room after a South Carolina game saying, how did we lose that? So if you do kind of take that mindset and you come in with the mindset of like, hey, I want Vipp playing by the third quarter. I'm Matt Collins. I want to take my shoulder pads off at halftime against a team like Delaware.
I mean, think about this. As a fan, would you rather have one of the hardest strength of schedules in the country? You have elite teams coming to you play at Keenan, and finish 8-4, or play a so-so average, schedule and finish 11-1. I'd take the better record all day versus Notre Dame coming to UNC and having a heartbreaking loss, or Clemson coming to UNC. Like, nah, give me Virginia and all those other schools, and let's go 11-1. So,
and if you could sprinkle in an Al Golden on the sideline with Miami just getting absolutely embarrassed with punt return and just deep shots, and you throw in the rivalry games and you're winning the rivalry games too, the vibes are just better. The vibes are just way better. But Schott, I like the vibes on this podcast. For the first podcast back with a lot to talk about, a lot to break down. Appreciate your time. Appreciate everybody watching and listening. We'll be back next week, and before you know it, we'll be talking about games.